Some people do.
Good, well, she was a harsh critic.
You know, thought that.
Yeah, okay, that's very great.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the launch of Rabbits 35 and Mitch Cave's book, How to Eat Fire and Why, and Rebecca Cheer's book, No Camelias. It's a big night tonight. We've got Rabbit founder here, Professor Jessica Wilkinson, in conversation with Mitch and Rebecca, after which this Rabbit 35 issues poetry editor Dr. Ella Jeffery will say a few words and invite some of the contributors to read from their work. Before we commence, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Dagger and other people, and traditional owners of the land from which people are zooming in on tonight. I also pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Just before we begin, those of you who are here in person tonight, I'd like to switch your phones to silent. If you'd like to tweet, we're at Reader 4101. Anyone needing to use the toilet has a wealth of options tonight. You can walk out through this gate a couple of meters down towards the light, or there's also the internal one. Most of you have found the bar. It will open again after tonight. We're going to have another drink and talk about how good it was. Depending on how time passes tonight, there may be time for a Q&A. If there is, we ask the chair to please repeat any audience questions for the benefit of the Zoom audience at home. There will also be signing after the event, especially for the book authors. But anyone you see here tonight, I think you can also go out and get them to sign a copy of the Rabbit Journal if they've been a reader here tonight. For the Zoom audience at home, you are welcome to ask questions using the chat box. I'm not sure how much time we'll have, but you're welcome to take a part. We'll also be pasting a link in there to all of the books, so you can purchase a copy online. If you want to call the shop during the event, you can also request that those books be signed for you tonight at the end. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jessica Wilkinson. She's made me cut her bio down quite substantially. She's published 3 poetic biographies through Available, and then there's just a series of crossed out lines that talk about all sorts of awards that they've won. And our last is the founding editor of Rabbit, Journal for Nonfiction Poetry, and the offshoot Rabbit Poet series of single author collections. Then there's a lot of very impressive academic credentials that I also have to cross out. So I invite you to make it welcome and to have support and honesty.
Thanks so much, Jackie. That's great. And thank you for your acknowledgement. It's lovely to be here. And thank you for hosting us. And it's lovely to be here also on this Nyanjan country. I'd also like to acknowledge that Rabbit is largely produced on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay respects to elders past and present there also. And I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Yeah, it's really lovely to be here. And I was just saying, it's really hot for me. So I'm like sweating buckets. I need to take this leather jacket off. Like, yeah, it's just so hot. I've come here from Melbourne, where it's and I live in a place called Ballarat, which is even worse than Melbourne weather-wise, where it gets like -3 degrees at the moment. So yeah, so hot. So but it's nice to be here as well for that. So just very quickly, for those of you who don't know Rabbit, so this is the 35th issue of Rabbit. And I started Rabbit in 2011, so yeah, it's 11 years old. And really Rabbit just started because there was a kind of book machine at the University of Melbourne, and the people who ran the book machine, they said, do you want to actually ask Michael Farrell, do you want to, who many of you would know and love, Michael Farrell was asked if he wanted to do an anthology, and he was finishing his PhD. So he said to me, do you want to do something anywhere? I said, oh, I don't really want to do an anthology because I don't want to have to deal with people wanting to be in an anthology. But how about you? produce, like, print a couple of issues of a journal. We'll see how it goes. They did that, which was really lovely. And then they went broke, and so yeah, and with that, and then I had to apply for funding, whatever. But very basically, at Rabbit, we're interested in the potential for poetry to explore and interrogate the boundaries of non-fiction writing. So Rabbit encourages poets to, as it says on our website, openly engage with autobiography and biography, history, politics, economics, mathematics, cultural analysis, science, the environment, and all other aspects of real-world experience, recollection, and interpretation. So every issue contains poems, reviews, essays, essays on poetry and poetics, interviews with poets, and visual art, and a homework section also for readers to try. And your beloved colleague poet up here, Sarah Hollander, is going to do the homework issue, the homework exercise for the next issue, which will be art. So look out for that. So I'm going to introduce guest poetry editor for the 35th issue, Architecture, shortly, Ella Jeffery, to launch that edition. But before I do that, there are a few other things going on. So the Rabbit Poet series, and here you'll see the latest in that series, commenced in 2013 with the publication of Geordie Albiston's 13 poems. Geordie sadly passed away in February, and so we've made that collection available for free download on the Rabbit website. And I would like to say also that I think it was Geordie, I first encountered Geordie's excerpts from the Hanging of Jean Lee and Botany Bay document when I was an undergraduate student, I think in my first year. So I was, 18, and it had such an impact on me and the works that I ended up writing, and then also this journal. So, I kind of tend to credit Geordie with the existence of this journal. And yeah, she's really deeply missed. But since then, the Rabbit Poet series has been dedicated to releasing first books by new poets. And we're celebrating 2 titles this evening by Mitch Cave and Rebecca Cheers, respectively. So before I introduce Mitch, I just want to quickly say a few thank yous to Creative Victoria and Australia Council for the Arts, to my colleague Tracy O'Shaughnessy and the Bowen Street Press team run through the Master of Writing and Publishing at RMIT University for their support in the production of the journal and the RPS books. Thanks also to Avid and the team here for hosting us in the heat, and the many readers and supporters of Rabbit. So the format for this evening is that I'm going to launch Mitch and Rebecca's books with a Q&A, and to ask them to read a few poems as well as part of that Q&A. And then Ella will briefly speak about her experience with the architecture issue of the journal, and introduce some contributors from that issue. And we're going to achieve all of that in less than an hour. So. Okay. All right. So, Mitch, come on down. So, Mitch Cave, to read the bio, grew up in Noosa Heads, Queensland, and is a writer and performer currently based in Brisbane. His work has appeared in literary journals nationally as well as internationally. He works in the disability sector and has English, German, Maori, Ukrainian and Polish family heritage. So welcome, Mitch.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So my first question is that you note in the brief preface to the collection, quote, "I lost everything in a house fire when I was 19 years old, including all of the poems I'd ever written, a loss that sparked the idea for this collection. These poems are not only acts of remembrance and recovery, together they shape a mind map of endurance, grief, courage, relationships, destruction, and healing. I love that preface. So, can you tell us a little bit more about your intentions with the collection and with those themes as well, just mentioned? So why tackle them through poetry?
Yeah, so back when I was 18, I started putting together a poetry collection. It was nearly finished by the time I was 19. It was like 80% finished. And then my house burned down. I lost all of that collection and other works too. So yeah, I guess with this collection, I sort of just wanted to recreate the memory of that book and yeah, just kind of the essence of it. And I sort of wanted to use poetry as well, because I think, you know, poetry can be very cathartic and very, just very expressive and, you know, healing too. So I feel like, yeah, I wanted to sort of tackle that with poetry instead of writing a diary or a journal. You know, I was just writing poems and just writing about my experiences. So yeah, I feel like I did that book justice, I hope. Yeah.
That's I think that's quite an unusual approach maybe for someone to, yeah, you mentioned a diary rather than a diary, to write poems about, you know, I wish that I had that kind of head start at such a young age. Yeah, like, yeah, why was there someone who introduced you to poetry or a poem? Was it at school or where did that start for you?
Yeah, I think definitely in school, I was just like reading a lot, just like reading, yeah, different poets and just getting a feel of what's out
Do you
there.
remember who they were?
I used to read, it's a bit problematic, a bit of Allen Ginsberg, who else did I read? Patti Smith, her collections. Yeah, just like a lot of like older sort of poetry. And yeah, I guess we're here now.
Well, in high school, I was reading like Lowell and Auden and what else was I suggesting? Yeah, like their standard. So, you know, Ginsberg, that's probably not bad for high school, right? Yeah.
You'd hope so.
Yeah. So the collection is split into 4 sections, air, earth, water, and fire. So I'd love if you could just tell us a little bit more about that grouping of poems. And yeah, when I read through them, I get that sense of a narrative kind of running through that culminates in the fire section. You know, we have the preface where we can sort of, you know, kind of vaguely see that narrative, but I really also like how it's not a defined narrative. It's yeah, but you keep it kind of more sort of floating and vague. So it's sort of like almost like a memory-based narrative in a way. Yeah, do you like, yeah, so there's a couple of questions there. First of all, yeah, telling us about the air, water, and fire. And then maybe if you could speak to the narrative that you see in the collection.
Yeah, so just with the different sections, air, earth, water, and fire. The original book was like the one that I lost in the collection, in the fire, sorry, not in the collection. Was originally split up into different elements. So I sort of wanted to just sort of recreate that and sort of the essence of that, particularly the first section was very much like the collection. But yeah, it's sort of just like what would you say, like a scrapbook of different memories and different events that have taken place in my life in the past, you know, 6 years, and just kind of collated them together. And I guess with every each section, like the elements, they could have, you know, like stand alone as a little chapbook, I suppose. You could kind of read them in any order, but yeah, it's just put together.
And sort of a way of ordering them, like creating a sort of order out of maybe the chaos of all of those, like what out of life, really.
Yeah, you can say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Well, how any poet really chooses to order a collection, and how you're sort of providing a navigational tool in a way that could have been any other number of navigational tools, but you've decided to use the elements, and that's how you're kind of feeling through these experiences. So that's interesting. You don't have to comment on that. Yeah, great. Okay, so there are, in my reading at least, 2 landscapes in the collection. So first, there are numerous poems that are situated in Noosa and on the shoreline. But there's also the interior landscape of the mind and of memory. So for me, one of the strengths of the collection lies in that interplay of these different sort of states, and how the mind really tangos with the metaphors when trying to understand the body's situation physically and mentally. So the first poem, How I Got Home from Noosa Last Night, has a sort of intoxicated in many different interpretations, almost 2 interpretations, I guess. This sort of sense of shifting impressions of, like, I think what I really like about that opening poem is this sort of idea of, that you're moving through a landscape, and it's, well, psychogeographically as well, at the same time. So I was wondering if you could maybe read that one for us, and then if you feel like talking to it as well, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I wrote this when I was like 18. It's the first poem I wrote for that collection that I lost in the fire. So I just thought I'll put it here too. Yeah, this is how I got home from Noosa last night. Our hands are bound by a neon dawn. No one will be swallowed by its glow. Saliva, yellow perhaps, though we never quite decided on a vacancy we will next inhabit. And so we wait until constellations overlap our mouths, hushed in frog patience, waiting for someone else's sky to break the news of rain. She has turned towards me, Soliant. Her absent face reminds me of the peculiarities found in broken eggs, and then her flesh reminds me of burning carpet. But in between heavy eyelids and summers with rain music, our gentle paths begin to illuminate themselves, intertwine as worms arrive beneath our feet, begin to crack pavements. Silence, my hair smiles, morphing into the paper of a novel I've never read. Beside me, the smoke of a forgotten bird offers me a lift home. Yes, pulls me inside myself, and I levitate. Think about how the labyrinth's warned I will begin decomposing moments before the sky presents itself. Voodoo trees, eclipse.
Great. Well, my next question is that the poem Carrie is one of my favourites, and it explicitly acknowledges the mind's complicated and confusing terrain. So yeah, could you read that one for us?
Sure. Yeah, my little bookmark. Yeah, this poem's called Carrie. It's from the last section of the book. My psychologist says that I'm unbreakable light, says I cannot survive with my teeth gritted. I say I am made of kinetic energy and that I'm turning into a blue Carrie Bradshaw. Say that there is a skyscraper concealed in my wardrobe, black tea bags in the sink, Dining room tables carved into abhorrent shapes say that there is an artificial shark tank installed in the bathroom mirror, say that my brain is made of soggy wheat bix and that I'm not the milk, say that one day I will not be afraid of barbecues or the colour of moths worrying across the wall, say that I have gradually become a citrus vampire in this very room. My psychologist tells me that I am not a vampire and commands me to weep frequently. So I haven't been back since October.
I like that, and I love that moths worrying against the walls. And then I just wanted to hear a couple more poems if you want to read a couple more poems for us.
Sure. This next one I'm going to read was also one of the poems that was in the first book. I was able to save it from Submittable, Love, Rejection. Yeah, this poem I wrote when I was 18. It's very 18 of me. It's called At Your Disposal. Last night I heard your voice, the sound is all I can remember. I can hear it again, I'm coughing up jam. There are snakes folded up inside my mouth, hissing. There is a wine glass embedded in my cranium. It is beautiful, life is so beautiful, and we communicate. If poets were as famous as rappers, the world would be a very scary place. I've seen you wrap bodies in plastic once you are done with them. Ask me, will I do the same or should I save the environment? No. Gently he edges closer to me, closer in wind gusts, and we shall become immortal. You have decided I will not wear clothing anymore. My body is simply too ugly to be hidden. I'm a cactus, more of a prick than you'd think. You're a bougainvillea, also a prick, but still pretty, some would say. Life is still so beautiful. This next poem is also one of the ones I was able to save from Submittable. It's called Observations from the Balcony by Moore Street. It's from the Earth section. The last one was from the Air section. Dandelion crouches into a ball, nursing nostril, quiet as red slides down the center of his cracked arrow mouth. Soft music draws ink from the ears, or hear the mortifying comfort of another's flesh beside you. Unscrews with claws, smearing into jar of caviar, lick jelly of carcass, black fish, rotten door frame. Deck chair exposes wall milk, and then yellow plants are corrupted by tree dust. It's all so sad now. Washing dangles, and they study their hands, decide to smile one last time as your nebula. Hand left to soak in dishwater, welcomed by cyclonic air carried from harbors of seafood calculus. It's about time. Snails gather in the corner to create a new lullaby, one that is happy to accommodate silent aggressions. Rust, but make it fashion, does not cater for people like me. The mermaid clock turns.
Do you reckon, can I butt in?
Sure.
Can you read the one with the pile of clothes and then?
From the end?
Yeah.
Sure. This poem's called Clothes That Have Been Donated. It's from the fire section of the book. 1 week after the fire, I sleep on carpet, still settling into the townhouse. We wake to a closet of hanger bones. This will fit my thinning self. She lifts a bag and upturns a village of cloth rising. I begin to raise a pyramid of hieroglyphic charity. We can still smell smoke. I will always be grateful. Okay.
Yeah. Just much, Mitch.
Thank you.
I also love to say that you are just an exemplary poet citizen to work with.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
The next poet I will introduce is also an exemplary poet citizen, and I just like to add that it's been such a pleasure to work with both of you. Yeah, it's been lovely. You can come and take a seat, Rebecca. So Rebecca, Rebecca Cheers is a writer, poet, zine maker, and playwright from Brisbane. She co-founded and edited Wolfpack, a Brisbane zine publishing fiction, non-fiction and poetry by femme and non-binary artists. She holds a Master's of Philosophy from QUT, for which she researched lyric poetry as feminist biography. And this book came out of that manuscript, didn't it? Yeah.
It did.
So No Camelias is the first book. So thank you, Rebecca, for being here tonight. And it's so lovely to be here in person to launch both of your collections.
Yeah, thank you for being here in person. That's completely wild.
Yeah. I have legs. So as we were talking before, like what does one do with legs when they're not in pajamas? They just tangle. So this collection, Rebecca, this collection is
the Camelias, which is where the title came from. I got more polite on the cover. And died around the age of 30, she had tuberculosis in the lungs. Fuck the Camelias. I was born 100 years too late to be a pale poet, wilting in my corset. Stiff and gilded fainting couches just fuck up my back. And when I tried to cough a ruby into pristine handkerchief, I brought up so much gunge it oozed through handworked Battenberg lace to land on my husband's shoe. But a shot of hot rum clears the path from rotting lungs to mouth. It never hurts enough to stop me laughing.
You handled the abject well. In fact, you both do. It's like you're very adept at managing the object on the page. Thanks. And that ruby, like every time I would read that, I would think, so can you tell us about the process of turning your research findings from archival sources or site-based as well? And you've got a photograph on the back that is from the cemetery, right? Yes. Into poems.
Yes, I can. So the research for this book is a mix of things. Often it's based on secondary sources, but a lot of it is based on sort of primary sources. A lot of the sources on Anne Brennan are a kind of like archival byproduct of the collection of her father's papers. So without really intending to, the people who collected those papers collected up a fair bit of her life. And I was able to access those things through state libraries, which is wonderful. But then I also visited sites from her life where I could. I visited the graves of some of her family members, but also places where she lived. And the process of writing the poems and doing that research was pretty symbiotic. It wasn't a matter of researching and then writing poems. It all kind of happened at the same time. I think one of the reasons why I chose to write in poetry was because the structure of the information that we have about her life is very full of holes and very complex and knotty and tangled and full of misinformation and malicious information. And so I was kind of able to like write different poems into different little points of tension in that structure. Sometimes I could write a poem that could sort of speculatively illuminate something about her life or ask a question about it more often. But sometimes I could write poems that addressed actual aspects of that information, writing on her life or documents from it. Sometimes I could write poetry that tried to tease out conflicts and contradictions, or I could just write poetry that tried to blow it up at times.
So do you want to read a couple of poems, like maybe one that is like more drawing from the document, and then one that's more speculative?
Yes, I'm pumped. I never read this one before. This poem is called Bitch Index. And it's difficult to read because it's written as footnotes accompanying this enormous paragraph taken from a book called The Roaring Twenties by a man called Jack Lindsay, which I'm not going to read because it's long, but you can check it out later if you like. This is a passage of a memoir about Jack Lindsay's time in the 20s in Sydney. That is one of the most comprehensive books that touches on Anne, but also has some issues. And I will never forget coming across this passage, which, among other things, refers to her as a bitch a lot. But this poem is called Bitch Index. Bitchery is a broken jug, nothing but mouth and handle, so that anything you pour inside escapes. Bitchery is two black gloves left armless on the stairs, one empty hand still palm spread in refusal. The chronicler of bitchery will spread the smears of paint which from a distance come to form her face. But even with the dry high ground of hindsight, you will find her bitchery eludes you every time. Ontological knots defy untying even after years, like was her beauty side effect or symptom? When Leon saw her eyes that God had painted like the skies, were they the bitch's hiding place or herald? And if the latter, what's the nature of her mirror image? What truths beyond the scope of memoir, written of the dead? What feminine excess did she so exceed to be their queen? Your bitch insight restricted to her vista, recreated on cheap postcards, photocopied into grey streaked mockeries, her signifier slipping as her days spilled like pearls off her string. I bookmarked one that will work. This one's more speculative. This is actually a good example of a poem where sometimes against my best instincts, I drew on a personal experience to try to illuminate something from her life. It's called Indeed. It has an epigraph here from Ray Lindsay. The custom was, after spending most of the afternoon eating, drinking, and talking at Amanda Liz, to adjourn to the Greek club, then in Park Street, where one pulled oneself together with enormous draughts of rich Turkish coffee. I knew a man who found a habit in the war. Not the noise they imagine, any, parties and police and hot tip of needle. The point is always cold, and life is mostly waiting. Hours of standing in a laneway in a duster, or the foyers of doctors who are careless with their pads. Learning to adopt the indifference of lampposts, to outlast every other patient, in case something comes your way. I know what he knows. Invited to sit at the edge of poets in circles, their bodies turned together. Sunflowers growing to a dim center, a centrifuge of words, Apollonian, Dionysian, spun until they're strange.
One more, if we can.
Yes, for sure.
Oh,
yes.
yeah, one more poem. No more questions from me.
Gotcha. Oh yeah. Here's one about Christopher Brennan, for my Christopher Brennan heads out there. It's called Wattlebirds. This is about the Brennan family at one point moved from Sydney to Newport, which is a coastal area in New South Wales. And this is about Christopher Brennan moving to Newport. And this is a place that I visited. I visited this beach. Wattlebirds. There are different birds at Newport, streaks of white like laugh lines through their feathers. Relief for once to find myself the least of noisy neighbours. Mob calls shake the Banksias, but vanish into sea foam down the one-railed ocean path. The first week after cutting wood for hours, I just sat, trousers drawing cold sea water from the sand. The waves beat my inner chatter into nothing. But the trouble with the sea changes around you. You're the one curiosity you can't leave on the curb as your desks and armchairs, roped up, pull away. Soon your thoughts will swell again from Banksia's 1,000 open mouths, and you'll be sliding back through the sunless streets of Sydney.
Just we're rocketing through this hour.
Yeah, ambitious programming for sure.
Anna's responding, it's like a seance. She started dancing up there. So thank you so much for for that reading, and officially launched. Thank you.
Thank you. Keep talking.
Okay, so now it's my pleasure to welcome Ella Jeffery to the stage. Ella is a poet, editor, and critic, and her debut book of poems, Deadbolt, won the Puncher and Watman Prize for first book of poems and the Anne Elder Award, and was shortlisted for the Mary Gilmore Award. Her poetry has also appeared widely in journals and anthologies, and don't know when it was, probably almost a year ago, that we were in discussions about an issue, and Ella thought it would be great to have an architecture issue of Rabbit, and it's been wonderful working with you. So I've invited Ella to introduce the poets, and I'm going to now remove myself from the chair. And I also asked Ella if she would read a poem, but I'm not sure if you're going to take that opportunity. We would love to hear an architecture poem of your own. And then we'll hear from Liam, Damon, Rebecca, and Zenobia. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I think just to make sure that everybody gets time to read their poems from architecture, I might save mine to the end, just as the dessert, if we get to have it. Should never did as a child. I'm just reading. Okay, hi everyone, it's so nice to be here. Thank you so much for coming along. Thank you, Jess, for inviting me to guest edit an issue of Rabbit. It's been such a pleasure to particularly guest edit an issue about architecture, which has for a really long time been an impetus for my own poetry and interest in my academic research as well. For me in particular, the thing that I've been primarily interested in the context of architecture is in the idea of home and the way in which we think about domestic architecture and vernacular architecture. So that's something that I guess I brought to the editing of this issue. And at the time when the submissions came in and I started to read them, two things were happening in my life. One of which was I had gotten a subscription to the streaming platform Binge, which has about 15 seasons of Grand Designs. So I was watching a lot of Grand Designs, the Kevin McLeod, the UK version, watching a lot of people build kind of foolishly enormous houses and run out of money, or build really economical, beautiful spare houses built, in this really kind of gorgeous, clean way. And of course, there's something poetic, just even in the way that you might think about those different forms of architecture. You can have the sprawling line, which is like a Ginsberg line almost, right? Or you can have the clean spare line that you might imagine you get in a Hirschfeld poem or something like that. So I think there's this kind of symmetry that I've always sort of been conscious of between the built world and the poem. And that's something that, as I said, I am kind of fishing for always in my own poetry. The other thing that was happening at the time was an apocalyptic amount of rain. Everything was flooding. You remember, right? We're all familiar. And my hometown copped the brunt of it. I've written a bit about this in the editorial. Lismore is where I'm from, and it went under an unprecedented amount of water, reaching places that nobody ever expected it to reach. And the town is still not really recovered from it in any kind of significant way, and is still on attempting to rebuild itself. And so those two things were happening. I was kind of thinking about these grand designs, these major projects, but also the attempt to rebuild. And in that space, I was also reading hundreds of submissions from poets from here and all over the world about the fragility of the environment. And it's actually just a possum, right? Brisbane. I was reading all of these poems about all kinds of different aspects of architecture, renovation, which has always been a kind of exciting aspect of my research, but also cloisters and apartment complexes and pyramids and all kinds of things that were making me think about architecture in a new way, and making me think about the built world as it exists in a kind of huge, sprawling sense that we're all encountering all the time. It's been such a pleasure to guest edit this issue. I just want to say a few quick thank yous, and then I'm going to bring up poets from the issue who are going to read from Rabbit. For those of you who are here today, I encourage you to buy a copy if you can. It's full of, dare I say, fantastic poetry. Picked myself for you. And if you're joining us online, please grab yourself a copy and these beautiful books as well. Thank you so much, Jess, for inviting me. It's been such a pleasure to guest edit Rabbit. Thank you to Mitch and Beth for sharing this tonight. Congratulations. I'm so excited to read these two books, and so excited for both of you. They both sound like fantastic books. And thank you to all of the poets who submitted. We have hundreds of submissions, and if you've chosen hundreds, I could only choose 25. So thank you to the 25 whose work I was able to publish and include in particular. We are going to have 4 readings today from the poets whose work is included in this issue. We're going to start with Damon O'Brien. That's okay with you, Damon. Well, he's on his way up, yes. I'm going to read not his bio, but his answer to the question that I asked. If I can just open this properly. So as you might know, Rabbit asks its contributors a question, and this question was, how is a poem like a building? So I'm going to read each of the poets' answers to that in lieu of the bio. So Damon said, poetry is my memory castle. In it, the great poems I have read are rooms and chambers. I can enter each poem and it feels like I am returning to the time and place I first read it, or to the emotional construct the poet made for me. Thanks for being here, Damon.
I hope you love that.
It's a memory castle.
Yeah, and thank you for choosing the poem. Pyramid. It was long before QAnon and anti-vaxxers, when alternative theories were an amiable mash of Mayans and ancient alien visitations. And my uncle believed, oh, how he believed, with the desperate certainty of an intelligent man, like a lapsed Catholic looking for a replacement God. He told me about the rollers and the barges, how no human science cut those blocks of stone or laid them out, how no stonemason could set the walls. He told me how they'd lined them up with Sirius or Alpha Centauri. Pi was in there too, I think, and equinoxes, and Halley's Comet, and ley lines, and the golden ratio. Such an edifice, such construction. I wondered how they'd crammed all those features into such a simple shape and still left room for deadfalls, tombs, and curses. He brought a video to our house that advertised a shiny range of portable pointy frames that we could place over our beds, our tomatoes, our bread, so that the wisdom of the ancients could keep things cold or fresh or put an edge on our knives. I felt sorry for the ancients then, that they needed a mound of stone to keep one corpse lemon fresh, and sorry for my uncle, who had built up theory upon earnest theory of plausible inconsistencies until he had a monument. That's the trouble with things that are too good to be true. It's the same trouble with those conspiracies. They're like the pyramids. Only the dead live in them.
Thanks so much, Damon. I just thought that poem was so funny, and it reminded me of a show that I watched once online called Ancient Aliens, which was all about exactly what the poem's talking about. Our next poet is Zenobia Frost, and I'm going to read her introduction, her answer to the question as she is making her way. Oh yeah, no, it's hard to do with 2 hands. Zen says, poems are a blueprint for experience, and sometimes poets utter poems as Legionella is to air conditioning systems. That's a good way.
That's not a line. Thank you so much for including me in the journal, and also a great pleasure to be here for Mitch and Beck's launches. Mitch were old VoiceWorks buddies. Beck, you know, I believe in this manuscript more than I believe in the old, like, anything. I was gonna say Santa Claus, and I was like, that's not a good, it's not a good pick. Maybe I do. I'm gonna read this phone now with this Chuck's Club attack. It's gonna be great. I remember the last time I was read a poem live.
It's been a while.
So I think with the Chuck's Club, beautifully read. It's just
Reading for the tendon if you're on.
yeah, I think so. This one's called Blueprint Boat Street. Really, it is a truly ancient poem that I renovated. It is about a share house in 2010. You can take yourself back to Brisbane in 2010, some video pizza capers. Good times. The problem with love is that either its object ends or you do. The problem with money is how rent rises under you like damn. We showed up to the inspection costumed as adults. Now we are crouched in the kitchen, walling out the coel cry of another housemaid. The house embraces its veil of black mold, lacing us in as we press each other out. There are 5 possible front doors. I take long showers. Through the window, a slant of green light makes the old brass taps glow gold.
Yeah, would you like a second? Yes, I'm sure it's yes, please. Read and vision.
I'm going rid of the chuck spot, so I feel like we've just elevated. This tiny poem is just fitting. It's about a telecom building in Indiana in the 30s that was giving telephone services, so it couldn't be shut down, but they needed to move it. So they moved it 90 degrees without ever disrupting service, without ever cutting off the plumbing or the electricity for the building. They just turned it 90 degrees over the course of about 3 months. I feel like these days they just wouldn't bother. So I was
They
really-
just knock it down and start it again, right?
Absolutely, and I was really fascinated with this poem, so it's just called Turning the Indiana Bell. Imagine how the light fell on their desks. Clerks in rotation elbowed into the 30s with their heated office coffee unimpeded. Telephones still rang. 10,000 tons of progress swung in a month. Still toilets flushed. Lunch revolved on static gossip. Panning Indiana backdrop. The future comes at you at 15 inches to the hour. The future marks you for demolition. But sometimes you're spun off axis, feeling nothing.
My next poet is Ella Jeffery. Come up and what's doing so. I am going to read his answer to question. Ling says poems are like architecture because they both reflect their raw materials and are more than their raw materials or something. Maybe they both use space. Anyway, you should all go check out Cogonada's film Columbus. Thank you for that.
It's still like cleaning stuff on this. That could have been so much worse. Rabbit is literally my favorite poetry journal in the world, and congratulations, Jess, for another edition. But I really don't like those questions, and I tend to treat them with quite a little bit of flippancy. There's probably more thought put into that one than usual. I also, I'm not a rabbit. Most editions themed. Lots of journals have most themed editions. I don't really care about them. So I'm not really sure what this has to do with architecture, but it's called a lark, an ascendancy. Sidle up to the gambit with skint evidence and assert truth like a traffic controller. The Slack chat lights up with the bright fire of night grey and the goggles that let you see everything they can't. And I can't admit I missed the email. To see smoking guns under every lifted rock gives a skill quickly acquired. Proof profit with the certainty of a certain someone's success. We are experts at making mistakes. As Pauline Kael was supposed to have famously said, you said as the credits slowly crawl past divisions of data wranglers. I mean, plenty of stuff has happened since Wuhan, but didn't Jerry Gergich go viral when this was as novel as a new app? Did anyone tell Stanley Tucci you don't shake a Negroni? Did anyone but the bartenders care? We say the headlines bore us, but our click prints play loose with our secret lives. Don't say health experts, say polling data. Now is the discontent of our wellness as a warming planet distributes late winter gifts. And I'm sliding into your DMs to ask you to show me the musculature of your lockdown. a hulking action hunk with a rapid fire weapon. I want a new career as a stick-up man doing hot guy summer stuff, but instead I'm log rolling for my side hustle. A podcast where me and 3 of my best bros sit around talking about how M&Ms were invented for AMRAPs. It's true. And other random stuff. Remember, we're all in this together. Oh, mio Dio. I almost forgot. P.S. I'm reading a Wallace Stevens bio and this email is giving me serious Harriet Monroe vibes. P.P.S. That line isn't part of the poem. P.P.S. But this one might be. And that's a special treat for Boys Rabbit because I'm pretty sure that's not going to be in the version of the poem that's in the book, but it was in an email I sent to Jess.
Thanks, Elaine. Okay, last up today we have Beck Jessen. Come on up, Beck.
Don't call me out of this stuff. That would be really
Rebecca Jessen says the poem as double vanity holds up 2 lives to the mirror and asks you to choose.
Thank you, Ella. Thank you, Jess. This one is about my favorite lifestyle show, Log Cabin Living. I'm kind of obsessed with it and usually puts me to sleep, which is great. It's called Double Vanity. 1. Brad and Lindy are looking to swap the hectic pace of city life for a peaceful log cabin getaway. The Brads and Lindys of the world love to take their dogs to the high country. Lindy is willing to pay more for a cabin that ticks all her boxes. Brad and Lindy relentlessly outdoors, hunting for that authentic log cabin lifestyle. Brad and Lindy want an A-frame with exposed beams and reams of natural light. They hope the log cabin comes furnished with the 70s brown recliner, mounted local wildlife, wood-burning fireplace, and wraparound porch. Brad and Lindy hate being close to their neighbors, as if the sight of another rooftop within shooting distance would break the illusion of intimacy. They want a view of the mountains, but need to be close enough to town to commute. Ideally, they'll have 5 acres of land for their dogs to roam. Brad hopes there's room in the budget for a big shed for his boy toys. Lindy wants an open plan kitchen with pine cabinets where she can cook and not feel shut in when they have visitors. To fulfill this private American dream, Brad and Lindy need at least 2 spare bedrooms, a minimum of 4 bathrooms, and a master ensuite with a double vanity so they won't argue over the mirror. 2. Late at night, I ask you to turn on Log Cabin Living. What I want is to double down on domestic bliss. We make fun of Brad and Lindy's relentless love of hiking and kayaking. The suspicious number of friends they want to entertain. Who wants guests staying every weekend? Who wants to clean all those bathrooms? Why can't Brad and Lindy brush their teeth separately like the rest of us? Why can't they stand the sight of another rooftop? I'm wary of this need for absolute privacy. What are Brad and Lindy trying to hide? We are the inverse of Brad and Lindy. It's you who wears the pants, me who doesn't want to be shut in the kitchen, you who's happy to go over budget, me who needs natural light to thrive. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And that brings us to precisely 7:30. Can you believe it? We did it, everyone. We did it. Thank you once again to all the poets who read. Congratulations to Beck and to Mitch. Jess, would you like to say anything in closing?
Just thank you and thank everyone. Thank you, hi everyone at home, watching at home. Yeah. buy the books.
Yeah.
Did the bookshop need to say anything before we wrap it up, or we'll just
We can't talk this.
we'll just cut them off, at home, and
Are available
Yeah.
at the counter. Go to the phone.
yeah, it'd be nice to populate the signing table. So yeah, thank you again. Oh, you're all lovely people. Thanks, great readings. That'll do. Get into the signing table. Yeah, I was like, you have to go. It's so eloquent. Okay. Keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, no, I felt like that. I felt like that as well, but then I was like, yeah. Also, you're back. I love it.
Yeah.